And I'm like, what?
Hey everyone, welcome to the Maegical Stories of Healing and Spiritual Gifts podcast. I am David, here with my lovely wife, Megan.
Hey everyone.
And we are so excited. We have an incredible guest with us today, Warren Gumpel. He is founder of the Ketamine Fund, producer of the Lamar Odom movie, Reborn, business partner of Michael Zapolin. We are so excited to have you here. And your mission, the Ketamine Fund's mission, if correct me if I'm wrong, is to reduce the suicide rate by 75%.
You know, it's possible that we have a tool here that is so effective for suicidal ideation that, you know, we want to shoot for the stars. You know, it's an epidemic of suicides here, and the effects on families are horrible. So, you know, we'd like to reduce it by 100%. I believe that if 100% of the people got ketamine in that last hour where there was contemplation and people were educated to know, I think we could easily reduce it by 75%. There's a ways to go for the adoption and education, and that's what we're focusing on. But yeah, that's the goal, is to just stop this epidemic.
Wow. Oh, thank you so much for making time for us today, man. I know it's funny how we've come across this. I was mentioning before we started this, Megan and I have been on this plant medicine kick for a couple years now because of our incredible psychedelics and plant medicine, because of her experiences with ayahuasca and the healing from that. We didn't know anything about ketamine until we got divinely connected with Michael Zappy.
And you know what's funny is, seriously, Zappy played a role in me even actually taking the plunge and doing ayahuasca. I shit you not. I had so much anxiety because I kind of knew what to expect, and I have a lot of trauma. So I was like, man, I have some shit to face, you know? And so I was just like, I don't know if we're going to do that. And I had a lot of evil in my childhood. And so I didn't want any like dark forces taking over. I mean, I was just, you know, the mind just goes crazy. And like, when you research ayahuasca, even if you research like positive stories, ayahuasca, none of them sound great. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And because I watched his documentary, The Reality of the Truth, dude, like, it literally helped me, like, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to get on that plane and I'm going to go.
Yeah.
And then he is the reason also I tried ketamine.
Right.
So I'm like, what? Well, I can't live without Michael Zapolin in my life.
We got on the call to interview about ayahuasca and plant medicine, and in a significant portion talking about ketamine. And we were like, whoa. Like, this is Megan's next step. And then we experienced this. So we reached out to you. We've heard incredible things about you and the work that you guys are doing. And we're like, well, let's finish our ketamine sessions first and then really discuss it. So we'd love to learn more about you. Tell us about how, how you came to fruition on this path of ketamine, your story and all that. We'd love to hear it.
Sure. You know, I suffered since I was a teenager from these bouts of depression that were, you know, they were horrible, and you know, it would just come on every couple of years, and then the intervals started becoming closer, and it became unmanageable. And you know, I went on heavy medications, which I'd been taking, those standard SSRIs, you know, since I was maybe 22 years old, and then you know, I had this bout that it just wasn't going away, and I really started getting hopeless. And then very luckily at that point, ketamine was just breaking the surface. This is about 4.5 years ago. And I was running out of options in terms of treating this, and it was getting dark. And I found ketamine at that point, and it was such a magical turnaround for me, that, which I find with a lot of people that we help treat, is you get out of that dark phase where you have no motivation, and you say, all right, I have to be involved in promoting and educating people, because there's a lot of needless suffering going on. So if I can take somebody that was in my position and educate them about ketamine and get them in and take them out of that space, you know, that's the job that I wanted to do at that point. And that's what I've been really running with, and then figuring out how to educate more and more people and giving them that option. You know, that's, and it's amazing, because it's so transformative for someone that's in that state where they really have no motivation, no energy, and then you see them snap back into it after a treatment or two. And it's very fulfilling compared to anything I've ever done in my life. So it's been a blessing to help my health and help me find a role in the world that feels really good to do.
That's
amazing.
That's awesome. Yeah, we have it's funny how everything happens for a reason. We have a guy in our group. We actually just interviewed him on our podcast also, Daniel Stone, who's a sweet older gentleman. And he suffered from deep, like suicidal depression for like 5 to 10 years. And because of the podcast, he's like, well, what the heck's ketamine? He always heard like party stuff according to ketamine, right?
Yeah.
But he ended up doing the sessions and we just interviewed him. He said he doesn't remember what it feels like to be depressed. Like,
I know it.
That's mind-blowing. That is mind-blowing. That is awesome.
I know. You know, when you've lived in that state for so long, those dark thoughts, the suicidal ideation becomes your go-to thought. And then when you can't even access it, because I couldn't believe it so much after those ketamine treatments, there were no resources, no information. You know, my understanding of ketamine was you were going to go into the doctor's office, feel a little dizzy, and then, you know, who knows, you know, I didn't know anything about it. And then after that, to not be able to access those thoughts, I can understand what he was talking about. They're just not present for you to get to. So it's amazing. And it's not an unusual story, you know, it's common.
Yeah. And what I do want to talk about is the experience of going into ketamine itself. I've had some really profound experiences. It's just been pretty mind-blowing each time. And I've heard as really cool experiences as I've had, I've heard really incredible extreme experiences from like Charles Patty, who we also interviewed, and I know in Zeph, of course.
I mean, his stories of obviously going to be, I mean, he's just such a magical person.
Right. Yeah. Right, he really is. So could you, I mean, I don't know if you know a number of how many times you've done it at this point, because it's kind of like your baby and that's what you're like bringing into the world. But could you talk to us about some of the most profound experiences that you've actually had while you were under ketamine? And for those that don't know, it's like an hour-long experience. Like, so yeah, if you could just tell us about yours.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds very far out, and you know it is. So you know, it's to talk to somebody that now that you guys have done it, there's a way to communicate. But you know, if I sat and explained this to a person, they might, you know, be a little frazzled. But you know, a feeling of journeying through the entirety of space, like an understanding of an infinite universe, a feeling at the same time that you are the entire universe and just a speck of sand on a beach. You know, these like incredible, you know, experiences of feeling like a part of the whole that, you know, it's a feeling that's impossible to describe with words. But you know, some of the things I felt blasting off through a trillion universes, you know, how do you
That's what you said.
And then there are other experiences where I have gone back and revisited these events in my life that I didn't know were so important and such a big reason for why I was experiencing some of the anxiety and depression, where I've gone back to an event in my life that obviously has had a profound impact. And I've watched some of these events in the room with myself at a different age and whatever was going on, and watched these experiences from a very objective third party perspective. And I've been able to take the charge off of some of these things that caused me so much pain. I didn't realize that they were, you know, these are things that happened when I was 5, 7, 10 years old, and not necessarily anything so terrible, but just these things that obviously impacted my emotional growth. So I've been able to revisit them in perfect HD reception and watch them from an outside perspective, and be able to understand some of the situations and just take that negativity off of it, and take that loop that it obviously causes my brain to start pursuing, which are these negative thoughts, anxiety. And you know, those are two very common things, and two things that I experience is, you know, interstellar travel and, you know, revisiting your own past like it's a movie that you get to watch. So that's kind of far out for people that couldn't even possibly understand, but these are very common ways that people describe their infusions. So
yes, Yeah,
It's hard.
Yours was similar.
Yeah, your consciousness literally goes somewhere else. I mean, it really does. I've definitely had my days of experimenting with psychedelics, and now it's more of Megan and I rarely, and when we do, it's more of a ceremonial, sacred thing. We're looking for guidance or clarity or something. But
except for mushrooms, we'll hit on that later, though.
yeah, mushrooms will hit on later. But yeah, it's same thing. And we'll definitely talk about kind of our experiences and what we got out of it. For me, it was interesting. The main reason we were going was actually for Megan. Megan has had just, 10 Lifetime movies worth of pretty unfortunate extreme trauma in her life, from 5 years old up to her up to like the 30s, like constantly. Yeah. This healing journey with her, we've tried multiple things and have found these key elements that have worked. So
like ayahuasca. Sorry, almost an allergies. Ayahuasca helped, tremendously, but it was not the heal all for me.
Of course.
Right.
Yeah.
So it was great for like a couple things for her, which is awesome, but there were still some pieces left. So we went in with the intention of her, but as her partner, like two things. I'm an extremist, fully admit that. So I've always been the extremist. She is not. If there's ever an experience, I'm always
I like to feel safe.
I want to go to the extreme of it and know the full experience. So I'm an extremist.
Yeah.
But I also want to experience what she's experiencing. Like I want to have a understanding of it too. And this movement of Maegical, this company we've created, is all about really destigmatizing things and helping people understand and know what really can heal people. So I feel like I should experience it too, so I can speak on. But it was interesting with me. One of the I've heard of people blasting off into space, but I've never quite experienced that until ketamine. Like literally, one of them. It blew my mind. I remember, and I was so conscious. I'm like, oh shit, this is it. This is the space thing. Like, I went under, and you leave your body, and I looked up, and I see all these stars, and I'm like, oh, I'm actually in space. It blew my mind because I've only heard about that. Like, and I've done plenty of psychedelics, but I've never experienced that. And then one of them shot me from like this one world that had this green water and these beautiful rock formations, and it brought me to these different worlds, and it was this, I get chills saying it but it was telling me and showing me like the universe is so vast. Like there are limitless. So many, it's limitless. Yeah. There's so many other things out there other than Earth. Like I was like, man, we're here on a mission. We chose to come here on a mission. Like
for sure.
Yeah, there's so many. And I was like, whoa, they showed me another planet. And this sounds so crazy because I was like in a medical facility, but it did. It was my consciousness. And then what was cool about it, and it's so vivid, at the end, it put me in a capsule. It was this tiny capsule, and it shot me back to Earth. Like I remember going into this tiny little capsule and just being shot through the stars back to Earth. And I was like, oh my God. And I'm totally conscious. Like, I'm like, whoa, this is all happening right now.
And for me, I had like epiphany after epiphany, but then when I woke up, I would forget them always. I was like, what the crap? Like, what the crap? I need someone in the room, like journaling for me. Cause
you know what? They're still there. Like I would scribble sometimes during the experience, and they're so profound and you feel them. But sometimes I'd look at what I'd written down, and it didn't have as profound an impact. But that being said, feeling those things is like super positive. I think that's a big part of the healing, because they are real. It is real when you're in there. It just might not translate into this existence, what you're learning in there.
Wow.
Oh yeah.
That's powerful.
You're on Mars, you're dissociated. You're in a different realm. It's impossible to describe, and you're doing a good job. I'm trying to encapsulate some of my experiences and the common things that I hear, but again, how can you explain this to somebody? But I understand the epiphanies, and I've had many myself, many that were real, that really came true, that I was able to apply. So again, it's Maegical.
Yeah, I love that.
Love it.
The one thing I want to touch on too that was really surprising for me, that really did have a deep impact on me. I'm very much an advocate of psychedelics as long as it's used in a respectful, responsible way. Anything can be abused, right? And in my years ago, when I was going through less of a sacred, more of an experimental phase, because it was helpful.
He wasn't always like
It
that.
wasn't always. When I first started, it was just I wanted to experiment with everything. But I'm thankful because it helped me get over like alcohol addiction, LSD, and mushrooms are huge for that. But anyway, you know, anything you do, you can abuse. And there was a couple instances that were, I've had probably 98% of my experiences on psychedelics have been fantastic, but I've had a few key bad trips that were deeply scarring. Like they rocked me, because if you have a bad trip and it goes real bad, I mean, that can really mess with your psyche a lot.
Oh yeah.
And it did for years, because what I didn't realize was anytime I'd go into another psychedelic experience, I could have a positive experience, but there was this hint, this lingering thing of this bad trip because of how bad it was. And dude, it was crazy. 2 times ago, this ketamine experience, it's weird because I explained it when I first got out of it, but then I understood it more hours later. Then it hit me. But it shot me to these horrible trips, and it showed me pieces of these horrible trips. And then it was like it cleaned it away. And it cleaned it away. It was amazing.
Yeah,
and
you can feel it cleaning.
It was cleaning. It would show me a visual.
Lit up.
It would show me a visual of this horrendous trip experience that I like didn't even think was in there, but I remember it, but I didn't think it was in there. It was like a subconscious thing. Yep. And then we clean it. And then hours later, I was like, man, for some reason it was showing me the bad trip, but I think it was cleaning it. And then sometime after that, we had, we did some mushrooms
but we even know we had them, so it was like, oh, thank you, universe.
So long story short, we ended up doing mushrooms at this beautiful camping site, and then all of a sudden, that little hint of that fear, it was like there was an instance, and it was just gone. It was gone. Yeah. It no longer existed. And then I was like, I have never, and then it hit me. I was like, the ketamine took away the fear of the bad trip. How is that even a thing? Like, and for my purpose and our purpose and Maegical's purpose, psychedelics aren't everything, but they are an instrumental piece to what I feel needs to be destigmatized and people need to understand to use as a tool. And for that to like, ketamine took away all of the aspect of that bad trip for me, which was amazing.
Yeah. I mean, we're kind of saying kind of the same thing, is like that was a trauma that was subconsciously like manifesting and you were feeling it. And, you know, again, the degree of the trauma really doesn't matter. If it's affected your emotional development, like I said, I've gone in and been able to see things and exactly the same thing, take the charge off of them. And that's why, you know, for PTSD, for trauma, these, you know, if you take the charge off of the things that are manifesting the anxiety or depression, or this whole list of things that manifest from complex post-traumatic stress, like anorexia, bulimia, OCD, all of these things, and you've taken the charge off of that underlying trauma, then people start healing. So those are obviously traumas for you. They were causing disruptions for you, even in your exploration. And, you know, they were bigger in your psyche than you imagined. So you took the charge off of it. It's awesome. Amazing.
Yeah.
Totally amazing.
And for me, I realized how important it was to pair the two. That was an epiphany I had. So I've done mushrooms so many times and they've always been amazing. But it was interesting. It was different. So I just had my last ketamine infusion. Mm-hmm. And then he surprised me on this little trip, you know, somewhere that was actually open that we could go to during this pandemic. And so we went and we didn't even know we found mushrooms. And so we took them, and it was such a different experience for me. Like, it was like, I literally knew I had new neural pathways, and like the mushrooms in my system after the ketamine, I had all these new perspectives on everything in life, and like perspectives that are just 100% going to serve me so much better than the perspectives that I had before. And like, I just knew, I was like, there is something to like having these new neural pathways and then eating the mushroom. And I only had one because I wasn't feeling great. My stomach was hurting. So I only had one. I'm like, these are the most powerful mushrooms. Yeah. But it was amazing. I mean, there was so much more I could go into on that night, but it was incredible.
She could feel those new neural pathways and those perspectives she never had before. So the benefits, man, and you talk about that experience you had about it. You saw the light, like your brain lit up.
Well, like that's what I was talking about when I said you feel it cleaning. Like I think it was my third infusion, and it was like someone turned a light switch on, like a light bulb, and my whole brain, I could just see it light up. Like it was
Yeah.
just lit, and I could just feel it, just know it to be true that that's what was happening. So
it's just.
What do you feel the magic dose is?
Oh, that's a good question.
Because that's what I'm curious about. I've done 90 was amazing for me. 100 was okay. 115 was really fuzzy.
Yeah, I think for every person it's different. So I think there's a real sweet spot, like you said. If there's too much, you get into this amnesiac state where it's kind of like a anesthetic area where you're not going to remember anything. So depending on your weight and your tolerance is, I'm sure the doctor started at a dose for you to just make sure that it was fine, which it is for pretty much everybody, and then started stepping it up. So I don't think there's a magic dose. I think I've seen really big guys respond to lower doses, and some people it takes them a little more to break through. So it's just finding that.
Right.
But it's not a scary experiment. It's interesting. The different doses are very different experiences, but when you find the right one and you get to that real dissociation where you have no idea who you are, that feeling of not knowing if your body's, you don't even know you exist. So it's hard to come back to yourself without a new perspective on like how important yet unimportant you are in the scheme of things and how seriously you take yourself.
And ketamine also, it helped. I had chronic shoulder, neck, back pain like forever. And it has been gone since ketamine. Ayahuasca did that for me, and then 3 months later it came back. But like it definitely helped with my chronic pain. I started waking up earlier like I used to, and like even though I'm a very driven person, I was even more driven. I had more motivation. Little things like that make a big impact. Yeah.
Listen, with so many people that we've treated and just seen go through this, I've seen people that hadn't got out of bed in a decade have a treatment, and then the next day they're calling me, telling me they're going to redo their kitchen themselves. So it clicks. Yeah, it clicks this motivation in for some people, and that's amazing. I wanted to go back to, you said your pain was cured, and I want to like really address this because I think it's important is that, the ayahuasca might have cleared it up for a couple of months, but after you do this ketamine, if you have that sense of relief, there's an interval where where, especially for me, coming from major depressive disorder, where, after a certain amount of time, the feelings start creeping back in, and you really need to pay attention to the boosters if you're in that state. Some people for PTSD, it clears it up and they don't have to go in for boosters, but talking to people that are going in for major depressive disorder it's very hard to keep people on track. So I get a lot of calls of people that, were cured and then they have to go back in, and they don't keep that schedule regularly. So they allow themselves to slide back. So it's very important to understand the interval of how long it's going to work and to keep on that track, because it's a very easy solution compared to going on, one of those medications that's in your system, but you do need the maintenance of it. And then after a couple of years, those intervals extend, and some people don't have to go back, but it's important to keep that in mind and not beat yourself up over it, because it does feel good to feel cured. But if it starts creeping back in, you get to go and have that experience of going to Mars again, and then you get to feel good again. So it's not it's not that big of a cost.
Oh, darn, I have to go have this profound experience again. Dang it.
Yeah.
Right. I'm like, oh gosh, does that mean I have to do ayahuasca again? Oh,
probably.
that was rough. That was rough. It was rough.
Well, bring us up to speed of where you're at now. This Ketamine Fund is so exciting. What you guys are doing. I read an article, but it's such an older article. I think it was late 2019 that you're doing like 400 infusions for veterans. I mean, there's been so much cool stuff on it. Talk to us about the fund.
Yeah, I mean, we really have this amazing clinic that we've been working with in Salt Lake City, Dr. Bob Heemstra, and really after we started treating the veterans, we put the program in place. Is the whole office started being run by veterans. So now,
Whoa.
yeah, so now the office manager is a veteran, pretty much everyone in there. I think there's 6 veterans employed there now. And I think all of them have had ketamine treatment. Certainly the manager, Oric, had his ketamine treatments and decided to start working there. But yeah, we started the fund, been trying to do like a specific clinical study of at least gathering some data for a lot of these veterans that come back with PTSD and are, on heavy amounts of medication. So we've given those 400 out. We're always in the process of fundraising because that's not so easy in the last couple of months with COVID and the stock market dumping. It's just not a great time. So we're in the process of raising money again to restart another clinical study and try to expand outside of Salt Lake City to be able to treat anyone in the country that calls in that's a veteran that needs treatment. That's the goal for the rest of this year, is to never have to say no to anyone that calls in and needs a treatment. So we have amazing clinics all throughout the country that have, given us breaks in terms of the cost for needs patients. And we just need to have enough to treat everybody that needs it. So that's the goal. That's where we are now, is still getting through the rest of those treatments in Salt Lake City and trying to move forward and have it offered to more people.
That's awesome. That is awesome. We are super grateful and absolutely honored to be able to get this message and just push it to everywhere we possibly can, because everyone needs to hear this stuff. Everyone needs to hear it, man. I
see people posting on Facebook, like, do you have an antidepressant that you recommend? And I'm like cringing. I'm like, yeah, I do. It's called ayahuasca and ketamine and mushrooms. But
yeah.
I think there's such this great awakening happening right now on many fronts, but one of the fronts is this such glaring obviousness of the pharmaceutical industry and how that is not where your answers are going to be. And there's this awakening of these natural medicines, and these medicines like ketamine and MDMA and ayahuasca and mushrooms, like all these different alternatives that are having incredible results. It's just a matter, since they're for so many years, so stigmatized, the cognitive dissonance is really heavy with people. But not that this is a good thing. People are getting so sick and so depressed that they're willing to try something new and try something else, and could you speak a little bit about, I don't know if you can, I don't know what the PR is with this, the film. Has it been released yet, the Lamar Odom film?
It's not released yet. We're in the sales process. We have an amazing sales agent and executive producers. It's being shown to all the streaming services over the last week or so. So really current. And then we're just waiting to see who we can make the right, arrangement with and get it out as soon as possible, because that information needs to be available,
Yes.
and we're talking about the stigma. I get a lot of inbound phone calls of people that start with, well, is this a horse tranquilizer? I'm used I'm used to it. It's a long conversation from there. But, I think my job is to get them, is to put enough in front of people so they come in a little further beyond that point. Is like, all right, this is an FDA approved treatment. It's been studied by Yale. It was, rated as a top 10 medical breakthrough by the Cleveland Clinic. There's positive results from trials at Johns Hopkins and Harvard University. I'd like people to get to that point so they understand it's a very safe, very, very available medication and treatment. So that's the goal. Like, same thing that you guys are doing, to destigmatize these things that actually work, and hopefully to amplify the quality of life for a lot of people. And like you said, David, people are suffering so bad that they're overcoming those stigma, but we need to educate more. We need people to adopt these things quicker, because some people aren't getting past that step. And, there's so much we can do to just scream from the rooftops. And that's kind of the role that I've taken on, and what you guys are doing as well.
Wow. That statement was so powerful. We need to use that, with everything you just said, as the preview clip, because that was like, I think there's so many incredible parts to this interview, but that's so key, because that's right. That's what you'll get is, oh, I've seen someone do this at a music festival.
There's just so much programming and conditioning. We are conditioned to believe that the things that are supposed to help us are actually the things that are killing us and hurting us, you know? And so it's just the deprogramming, and that's a challenge, but you know, there's a lot of people that are finally opening up to it.
Yeah. And it sounds like you're doing that. I'm glad you addressed the horse tranquilizer thing too, because that's what that's the first like immediate thing that goes into their mind. And it's like, no, listen to some facts real quick.
Yeah.
That's awesome, man.
I think, you know, having people see someone they identify with, like Lamar, go through it and how magical the treatments are and how much he benefits. I think that's an important component for people to see, is like, it's done in a medical office with a doctor. You know, it's precision. It's administered precisely. You know, you're in there for an hour. You're back to yourself wanting to have lunch, you know, an hour and a half later. It's not scary for most people. You know, people have access some memories that can be emotional, but I'd say for most people, it's not scary at all. Sometimes they have like this cathartic release of emotions because they're revisiting something they haven't seen, but it's very pleasant for most people, like an amazing experience. So
yeah, that's what I was going to say about the Lamar Odom thing, man. That's huge, because that's someone that everyone can be like, oh wow, like that's going to be such a great step in this movement for sure.
Yep, and they'll know the before and the after.
Yeah, and you see it in the movie. You see it on his face. The day before his first ketamine treatment to the day after, you know, his frequency has shifted. And it really was that quick for Lamar. And he started applying better practices in his life right after the ketamine started. And, you know, it's magical. And he was one of the people that it was instantly magical for, which is so amazing to capture that, because, you know, some people after their first treatment, they get something out of it. You know, second treatment might be their breakthrough. Some people, their fifth treatment, but Lamar was like a first treatment breakthrough, and to be able to witness that and kind of be a fly on the wall, it's totally amazing.
Wow,
totally amazing.
Awesome. Well, man, I gotta ask before we end it here, what's the highest dose you've done? Totally curious.
Well, you know, Dr. Heemstra in Salt Lake City will stack the doses, so an intramuscular dose. Yeah, so, you know, I've done 150 and, you know, intramuscular, and I've done even more IV, but, you know, at the same time, you get to a stage where you don't remember anything.
I was gonna say,
yeah. So it's not even about pushing like the dosage, because if you push it too high, it's just nothing as an experience.
Right.
So, you know, once you find the dose that you can, you know, fly through Mars with, I think, I think right around there is the dose, whatever it is for you, you know?
That's awesome.
So yeah, once you detach that dissociative dose, which, you know, people get as their doses escalate, but with Dr. Heemstra, you know, 150 milligrams intramuscular, and, you know, that's pretty much the cap of where you're conscious.
Yeah.
For me,
that's
at least.
Awesome. Well, so talk to us about so I know the Ketamine Fund is the big thing you guys are working on right now. Where can they, we're going to post whatever links you need to all of the channels on this interview. Where can they find it for anyone listening?
Yeah, so ketaminefund.org, you know, that's a good place to go and look. And if you want to donate, of course, it's appreciated. You know, every time people donate, it's just offering veterans, and hopefully we're expanding beyond veterans, but right now offering veterans free treatments. We've also, amazingly, Zappy and I started working with a traditional drug rehabilitation center, and they're implementing the ketamine protocols. They're really are focused on adjusting those outcomes, because those rehab facilities have like a 5% success rate. And these guys at Road to Recovery in Fort Lauderdale that we're working with, they're actually focused on changing the industry. So we're going to be starting those protocols probably next week. And I think it's going to be amazing for the drug and alcohol rehab industry and for people suffering from those things. So, you know, we're working with those guys. We're also starting something called KetaMD, which is an amazing thing. You know, this really came up during COVID. This is a way where you can get telemedicine ketamine, and you would do your treatment via a telemed platform with an advocate like me or Zappy, or some of the veterans that we've treated have signed up to be advocates. So you'd speak to your doctor via telemed, get your medicine shipped out, and then you would log back on and go through the experience with an advocate, and have somebody there that you can call and say, this is how I'm feeling now. Can you advise me of anything? So that's something amazing that came out of this.
Whoa.
That came out of this. Yeah.
That, man,
cool.
the potential.
I'd much rather do it at home.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow, the potential of that is amazing. That means you could reach people that don't have to have a facility. I mean, obviously you want to have a facility, but the potential to be able to do that without it's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, people that are severely depressed, they don't necessarily want to go after they've failed 20 treatments. They don't believe anything's going to work, and they don't want to go into a doctor's office to try something else. But this will give people the opportunity to try it at a much lower cost than going into a clinic. And I think it's going to save a lot of people. And it's gonna be open to a much broader percentage of the public, just because of the drop in costs and the ease
Right.
of doing it. So I think that's the way to get more people to go down the pathway.
Awesome. That's
cool.
awesome. Well,
I'm very excited about that.
Yeah, you should.
Well, man, thank you so much for your time today, man. This has been so cool, so awesome to chat with you. We really appreciate it. The last thing we always ask every person on our show with one last question is, if you could leave the world with one message, what would it be? Just be empathetic. Try to find it. If you don't feel it, look to discover it. The world needs it right now. This has been a very hard time. Find empathy for other people. That's awesome.
Try to be inclusive. The divisiveness is not working. So just understand we're all one family. We're all really one organism. And it's hatred is not worth it. And human life will not be sustained through hatred. We need to come together.
Absolutely.
So well said. Absolutely. Hate will never transmute hate. Only love will do that. So thanks, man. I appreciate everything. Thanks for your time, and have a great rest of your day.
Tell Zappy
Thank
hi.
you guys.
Yeah, tell Zappy we said what's up.
I will. Bye, guys.
Bye, guys.